In my 35 years on the bench here in Providence, Rhode Island, I've learned that you can tell everything about a person's character not by how they act when things go their way, but by how they treat others when they have power. That Thursday morning started like any other, until a man in a $3,000 suit walked into my courtroom laughing on his cell phone, completely ignoring my bailiff's request to silence his device. He was here for multiple parking violations in handicapped spaces, and the fine was $500. What he didn't know was that his next 10 minutes would teach him a lesson about respect, humility, and what real justice looks like. If you believe that character matters more than wealth, hit that subscribe button right now, because what happened next reminds us all that in my courtroom, everyone is equal. The bailiff called the case. Jonathan Prescott, multiple parking violations. The man, mid-40s, perfectly styled hair, expensive watch that probably cost more than most people make in 6 months, finished his phone call before casually strolling to the podium, not hurrying, not apologetic, just supremely confident that this was beneath him, a minor inconvenience in his important day. I've been doing this long enough to recognize that walk. It's the walk of someone who's used to writing checks to make problems disappear. "Mr. Prescott," I said evenly, "good morning." He barely nodded. "Your Honor." No warmth, no respect, just 2 words he had to say to get through this. I looked at the file. 5 separate violations over 3 months, all parking in handicapped spaces, all at different locations around Providence, all unpaid until the court summons was issued. "Mr. Prescott, it says here you've parked in handicapped zones 5 times. The total fine is $500. Do you have anything to say?" He shrugged. Actually shrugged. "Your Honor, I'm a very busy man. Sometimes I'm running late to meetings. I park where it's convenient. I'm happy to pay the fine. Can we move this along? I have a conference call in 20 minutes. Let me tell you something, my friends. I felt something shift in my chest. Not anger exactly, something deeper, disappointment maybe. This man saw $500 as nothing, an inconvenience fee, a cost of doing business. He saw handicapped parking spaces not as protections for people who genuinely need them, but as premium parking for anyone willing to pay. "Let me ask you something," I said, keeping my voice level. "Do you have a disability that requires handicapped parking?" He actually smiled. "No, Your Honor, I'm perfectly healthy. I work out 5 times a week." He said it like it was something to be proud of in this context. "So you knowingly parked in spaces reserved for people with disabilities because it was more convenient for you?" He spread his hands. "Your Honor, with respect, I'm willing to pay. That's why the fine exists, right? I pay it, the city gets revenue, everyone's happy. Can I just pay and go?" I sat back in my chair. Inspector Quinn, standing to my left, caught my eye. I could see his jaw tightening. The prosecutor, Maria Santos, was staring at Prescott with barely concealed disgust. In the gallery, I noticed an elderly woman in a wheelchair with her daughter. They'd been waiting for their case. The daughter's face showed what everyone else was feeling. If you're watching this thinking that wealth shouldn't buy immunity from basic decency, leave a comment below about a time you saw someone abuse their privilege. Share this video so others can see what happens when entitlement meets accountability. "Mr. Prescott," I said carefully, "I want to make sure I understand your position. You believe that because you can afford to pay the fine, the law doesn't really apply to you. The parking space is just a commodity you can purchase. Is that accurate?" He shifted, sensing perhaps that his approach wasn't working. "Your Honor, I'm not trying to be disrespectful. I just think we're making too big a deal out of this. Nobody was hurt. The spaces were empty when I used them. If someone with a real disability had needed them, of course I would have moved." A real disability. Those 3 words hung in the air. I thought of my father, who worked construction for 40 years until his body gave out, who needed a cane in his final years but was too proud to get a handicap placard, who would have given anything for one of those close parking spaces when his knees were screaming. "Mr. Prescott, let me tell you about handicapped parking spaces. They exist because someone in a wheelchair might not be able to traverse a long parking lot, because someone with a heart condition might not be able to walk the extra distance without serious risk, because someone with chronic pain is already fighting a battle you can't see just to get through their day. These aren't premium parking spots. They're equalizers. They're dignity." He had the decency to look slightly uncomfortable. "I understand, Your Honor. I'll pay more attention in the future." But there was no real contrition in his voice, just words to make this go away. "What do you do for a living, Mr. Prescott?" I asked. He straightened, clearly more comfortable with this topic. "I'm the CEO of Prescott Digital Solutions. We're a tech company. Maybe you've heard of us?" I hadn't, but that wasn't the point. "How many employees?" "About 200 at our Providence facility. And if one of your employees repeatedly broke company policy because it was more convenient, what would you do?" He paused, seeing the trap but unable to avoid it. That would depend on the policy and the circumstances. Of course it would, I said. Context matters. Character matters. Let me ask you something else. In these 5 violations over 3 months, how many times did you think about the person who might actually need that space? How many times did you consider that your convenience might be someone else's barrier? He was quiet. For the first time, he seemed to realize this wasn't going the way he'd expected. Honestly, Your Honor, not much. I should have. I can see that now. But then something happened that changed everything. His phone rang. Loud. Disruptive. He'd never silenced it after that first call, and instead of declining it, instead of apologizing, Jonathan Prescott looked at the screen and actually answered it, in my courtroom, while standing before the bench. Yeah, tell them I'll be there in 10 minutes. This is taking longer than I thought. He looked up at me like this was perfectly acceptable, like I was the one being unreasonable for taking up his valuable time. Before I tell you what I did next, I need you to hit that like button if you believe that respect isn't optional, regardless of how much money you have in your bank account. I let him finish the call. I sat there silent, watching him. When he finally put the phone away and looked up at me with that same entitled expression, I knew exactly what needed to happen. Mr. Prescott, I said, and my voice had changed. Everyone in that courtroom heard it. In my 35 years on this bench, I have seen thousands of people, rich, poor, everything in between. I've seen people come before me who've made mistakes, who've been struggling, who've been at their absolute lowest point. And you know what? Most of them show more respect for this court than you've shown in the last 5 minutes. He finally looked concerned. Your Honor, I apologize for the phone. That was inappropriate. It was more than inappropriate. It was contemptuous. You answered a phone call while standing before this court because you believe your time is more valuable than these proceedings. You parked in handicapped spaces 5 times because you believe your convenience matters more than the law. You've stood here treating this like a transaction, like justice is something you can purchase and dismiss. I paused, letting it sink in. Let me tell you something about justice in my courtroom. It doesn't care how much money you make. It doesn't care about your conference calls. It cares about character, respect, and understanding that we live in a society with rules that apply to everyone. The courtroom was absolutely silent. Jonathan Prescott's face had lost some of its color. Your Honor, I truly apologize. I'll pay the fine right now, and I promise you this won't happen again. I shook my head slowly. You don't understand. The $500 fine, that means nothing to you. You said so yourself. You're happy to pay it. It's just the cost of convenience. But that's not justice. That's not accountability. That's just wealthy people buying their way around the rules that everyone else has to follow. Inspector Quinn stepped forward, anticipating what might come next. I could see people in the gallery leaning forward. Mr. Prescott, I'm looking at your file here. Your company, Prescott Digital Solutions, reported revenue of $42 million last year. Your personal compensation as CEO was listed in a public filing at $2.3 million. Is that accurate? He nodded warily. Approximately, yes. So $500 is what to you? About an hour's worth of your time? Less? What you spend on a dinner? His silence was the answer. Here's what's going to happen, I said. I'm finding you in contempt of court for answering that phone call during these proceedings. I'm also taking into account the pattern of behavior here. 5 violations. No remorse until you were forced to appear. A clear attitude that the law doesn't apply to you because you can afford to ignore it. So I'm going to make sure this fine is actually meaningful to you. I paused, watching him. I'm setting the fine at $50,000. The courtroom erupted. Gasps. Whispers. Someone actually said yes from the gallery. Prescott's face went white. Your Honor, you can't. That's $50,000 for parking violations. I held up my hand for silence. The original fine was $500 for the parking violations. I'm adding $49,500 for contempt of court and to ensure that you actually learned something today. In addition, I'm ordering you to perform 100 hours of community service. Specifically, you'll volunteer at the Disability Services Center here in Providence, helping people with mobility issues get where they need to go. You'll push wheelchairs. You'll carry groceries. You'll spend time understanding exactly why those parking spaces matter. If this moment of accountability resonates with you, share this video right now. Let people know that justice isn't for sale in Providence, Rhode Island. Prescott was shaking his head. Your Honor, this is excessive. I'll appeal this. $50,000 is what? I interrupted. A meaningful consequence? Something that might actually make you think twice next time? Good. That's the point. You know what else you're going to do? You're going to write a personal apology letter to the Disability Services Center, and it's going to be posted in your company lobby. Your employees are going to see their CEO take accountability for treating people with disabilities like their needs don't matter. He opened his mouth to argue, then closed it. The prosecutor was trying to hide a smile. Inspector Quinn nodded approvingly. I wasn't finished. Mr. Prescott, I want you to understand something. This isn't about punishing you because you're successful. I've had wealthy people in this courtroom who've shown humility, who've shown character, who've treated everyone with respect regardless of their own success. This is about the fact that you came in here believing that your wealth exempted you from basic human decency. It doesn't. Not here, not in my courtroom. I leaned forward. My father came to this country from Italy with nothing. He worked every day of his life, treated everyone with respect, and taught me that character isn't about what you have. It's about who you are when nobody's watching. It's about understanding that every person you meet deserves dignity. You parked in those handicapped spaces when you thought nobody was watching, when you thought it didn't matter. But it mattered to the person with multiple sclerosis who had to park farther away because you took their space. It mattered to the elderly veteran with a walker who had to struggle across the parking lot because you couldn't be bothered to walk an extra 20 feet. Prescott's head was down. Whether he was truly understanding or just embarrassed, I couldn't tell yet. But I wasn't done teaching. You have a choice now, Mr. Prescott. You can appeal this decision, spend more money on lawyers, and maybe get it reduced. Or you can accept it, complete your community service, and actually learn something that might make you a better person and a better leader for those 200 employees who depend on you. What's it going to be? He was quiet for a long moment. The courtroom waited. Finally, he looked up at me, and for the first time I saw something different in his eyes. Not just fear of consequences, something that might have been shame. I'll accept it, Your Honor. You're right, I was wrong. Not just about the parking, about my attitude, about thinking that my time and my convenience mattered more than other people's needs. I'll do the community service, I'll write the letter, and I'll make sure this never happens again. I studied his face, trying to determine if this was genuine or just more words to satisfy the moment. Mr. Prescott, I hope you mean that. I really do. Because here's what I've learned in 35 years. Life has a way of humbling all of us eventually. Health fails. Circumstances change. The person who's perfectly healthy and working out 5 times a week today might be the person who needs that handicapped space tomorrow. We're all just one accident, one illness, one stroke of bad luck away from needing the compassion and accommodation we should be giving to others right now. Something in his expression shifted. Real emotion breaking through. My mother, he said quietly, she had a stroke last year. She's in rehab now, learning to walk again. I should have thought of her every single time I parked in one of those spaces. I don't know why I didn't. His voice cracked. I don't know what's wrong with me that I didn't think of her. And there it was, the humanity underneath the arrogance, the pain underneath the privilege. Mr. Prescott, I said more gently, nothing's wrong with you that can't be fixed by paying attention and caring about people beyond yourself. Your mother's stroke. That's hard. That's really hard. But instead of making you more empathetic, you disconnected. You got busy. You got focused on work, on success, on moving fast, and you forgot to stay human. I see it happen. Life gets hard, and sometimes people armor up instead of opening up. Subscribe to this channel if you believe in second chances, but also believe that those chances have to be earned through genuine change and accountability. He nodded, and I could see tears forming. The fine stands, I said firmly. The community service stands, but I'm going to tell you something else. When you go to that Disability Services Center, I want you to tell them about your mother. I want you to ask them what resources might help her. I want you to connect your service to your own life. Don't do this as punishment. Do it as education. Do it as penance if you need to. But also, do it as a son who wants to understand what his mother is going through. I will, Your Honor. Thank you. He paused. I know that sounds strange, thanking you for a $50,000 fine, but I think I needed this. I needed someone to stop me and make me look at who I've become. I nodded. We all need that sometimes. Go on. Inspector Quinn will give you the information about the community service requirements. I expect to see a report on your progress in 60 days. Don't disappoint me, Mr. Prescott. More importantly, don't disappoint yourself or your mother. As he left, subdued and thoughtful, I noticed the elderly woman in the wheelchair was crying. Her daughter was comforting her. After we finished their case, a simple parking meter issue that I immediately dismissed, the daughter approached the bench. Your Honor, my mother wanted to thank you. She uses handicapped parking every day. She's been blocked out of spaces by people who don't care so many times. What you did today, standing up for people like her, it meant everything. The mother wheeled closer. God bless you, Judge Caprio. You reminded me that someone cares. I came down from the bench, something I rarely do, and I took her hand. I care, and I'm sorry that anyone has made you feel like your needs don't matter. They do. You matter. She squeezed my hand with what strength she had, and I felt that familiar weight and privilege of this position, the ability to do something, to stand up, to push back against indifference and entitlement. Later that day, Inspector Quinn came to my chambers with information. Judge, I did some checking on Prescott. His mother's situation is real. She had a massive stroke 8 months ago. He's been funding her rehabilitation, but apparently he's been so buried in work that he's barely visited. Classic case of dealing with pain by avoiding it. I nodded. Maybe this will help him find his way back to what matters. Maybe it won't, but at least we tried. 3 months later, I got a letter. It was from Jonathan Prescott. He'd completed his community service hours, all 100, but he didn't stop there. He'd continued volunteering an additional 50 hours. He'd hired 3 people from the Disability Services Center to work at his company, in positions specifically designed around their needs and capabilities. He'd implemented a company-wide accessibility initiative, and he'd visited his mother every single week, bringing her to appointments, sitting with her through therapy, being present. The letter ended with these words: Your Honor, I came into your courtroom thinking I was above the law. You showed me I was barely living up to being human. The fine hurt. The community service was humbling. But the real consequence was looking in the mirror and realizing I'd become someone I didn't respect. Thank you for not letting me stay that person. My mother says to tell you that you gave her son back. I'm enclosing a check for an additional $50,000 to the Disability Services Center. Not because I have to, because I finally understand that I can. With gratitude and respect, Jonathan Prescott. Let me tell you something, my friends. This is why I do this job. Not for the moments when I get to be tough or hand down big fines. For the moments when justice actually changes someone, when accountability becomes transformation, when a person who walked in entitled walks out enlightened. That doesn't happen every time. Maybe it doesn't even happen most times. But when it does, it reminds me that this work matters. I've been asked if the $50,000 fine was too harsh, if I was making an example of someone because they were wealthy. Here's what I believe. Justice has to be proportional to the person receiving it. A $500 fine that means nothing isn't justice. It's theater. It's checking a box. But a consequence that actually gets someone's attention, that makes them stop and think and feel something, that has the potential to change behavior, that's justice. That's the point. And yes, I do enforce the law when people are struggling financially. But you know what I don't see from them? The contempt, the dismissiveness, the attitude that rules don't apply. I see people who made mistakes, who are trying their best, who show respect even when they're scared. That matters. Character and attitude matter. How you treat people when you have power matters. Jonathan Prescott needed to learn that lesson, and I'm grateful he was willing to. If this story touched you, if you believe that accountability and redemption can coexist, leave a comment telling me about a time you or someone you know learned a hard lesson that changed them for the better. And hit that share button, because stories like this remind us that it's never too late to become better than we've been. I think about that courtroom moment often. The silence after I announced the $50,000 fine. The shock on Prescott's face. The vindication in the eyes of that elderly woman in the wheelchair. And I think about how easy it would have been to just take the $500 and move on to the next case, to process it like paperwork. But that's not justice. That's not why I took this oath. I took it to stand up for people who can't always stand up for themselves, to remind the powerful that power comes with responsibility, to use whatever authority I have to bend things, even just a little bit, toward fairness and human dignity. My father used to tell me, Frankie, when you have a voice, use it for people who don't. He was talking about immigrants like himself, people trying to make it in a new country who didn't always know the language or the system, but it applies to everyone who gets overlooked or dismissed. People with disabilities aren't asking for special treatment. They're asking for basic accommodation so they can live their lives. And when someone like Jonathan Prescott treats those accommodations as premium parking, someone has to speak up. That day in that courtroom, I got to be that someone. The beautiful thing is that Prescott heard it. He changed. He became not just compliant, but compassionate. That's what we should hope for from justice. Not just punishment that makes us feel better. Transformation that makes society better. One person at a time, one case at a time, one moment of accountability that leads to a lifetime of different choices. So yes, I made a $500 fine into $50,000, and I'd do it again. Not because I enjoy being harsh, because I believe in the power of consequences that matter, because I believe people are capable of change when you hold them accountable, because I believe that in my courtroom, everyone is equal and respect isn't negotiable. God bless you all. Take care of each other.